My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all, and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple, and if they really loved each other his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again, and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am. I am a 39 years old male, and I lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I wasn't offered any help, just words. They'd just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I've created an account for my son's college fund and kept putting whatever I could get at the time, and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I can't express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son and as a way to remember him, and we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mom agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to someone else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. Thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision, and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and ending up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mom calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this. My ex and I divorced 3 years ago. She was cheating, but at this point I don't care about the relationship anymore. The pending lawsuit has nothing to do with her or him, but rather their actions. My ex and I have a son 13M that we split time with 50//50. He's a great kid that interests have changed a lot tbh, as I imagine more kids / teenagers tend to do through the years. One thing my son was heavily into at some point was Legos. He used to play with them all the time, and personally I think they're a great toy for different reasons. I used to love playing them with him, and to this day I still collect boxes that I leave unopened as a collection. Well, when my ex and I divorced, she got with someone who loved Legos more, I guess. From what I know, he loves making creations and building the sets in. I don't care. Seems cool. He does one thing I think is very, very weird. He uses crazy glue so the sets can't break or pieces can't be lost. It seems so weird to me. The issue is, I was out of town for all of 3 days last week for medical reasons. And my son wanted to get his PS4 so he could play it at his mom's. This isn't out of the ordinary at all, and he has a key, so he let me know he would be stopping over for it. I told him to have fun when I saw him on the entry camera. My wife's husband was with him, which was a no-no. I told him via speaker to not go in and to wait on the porch. He flinched but walked in anyway. I sent my ex a text telling her to call him and tell him he's 1 minute away from a cop call. He left my home with a bag in hand, which I didn't think much of because my son had his games too. Well, my son texted me later that evening and said he didn't know it at the time, but he's pretty sure SD took some of my sets. These are all old sets and 2 are worth big money. When I got home I confirmed the missing sets and called my ex. She had no idea, but he admired he took them, but it was so son could have the sets to complete his collection. My son doesn't even like Legos anymore and told his mom he wouldn't steal from me. My wife asked how much it would cost to replace them, and unfortunately it's more than their savings. Actually, it would take their house down payment plus more. I told them if they didn't pay in 2 weeks I was suing and pressing charges. The price in the sets makes it a felony. My ex and her husband are saving for a house which would give my son more space when he's there. But those sets were going to help pay for his education someday or a home of his own. I filed the police report and have talked to a lawyer, and we're moving forward with the suit. Everyone is calling me a joke because they are just toys, but I don't get it. They are worth real money. I'm not rich, guys. I needed those to help with my son's future, but again, taking this money does deny my son things at his mom's house. This all went down about an hour ago, and my wife is still crying in our bathroom with the door locked. Backstory: we had our son, now 11 months old, while my wife is in residency. She took a few weeks off before giving birth, and then went back to work a few months after. While I transitioned my hours to part-time so that I could stay at home and raise our son, my mom moved in with us shortly after the birth in order to help out, which allows me to get in a few hours of work per day and also not get swamped with taking care of the baby / housework. She's quite old-fashioned and would definitely not prefer this arrangement with me being a stay-at-home dad. But she hasn't said anything to either of us and has been a great help. For anyone unfamiliar with medical residency, it is brutal. My wife has just over a year left. Sometimes she comes and goes for 1 to 3 days and our son is asleep the whole time she's home, which has been happening more as his sleep schedule shifted to sleeping through the night. My mom and I make sure that when she's home and the baby is awake, my wife gets him 100%. I know it's been hard on her, but unfortunately it's just going to be this way for another year. The first big milestone she missed was him rolling over. When she got home, my mom pulled her over to the baby all excited. I thought she was going to tell her, but instead she says, "Julie, you came home right on time. He's been moving about as if he's going to roll over." They both stood there encouraging him, and right on cue he rolls. My wife was elated. She was so worried and guilty about not being there, and she took it as proof that she can still be a present mother while working. So we continued. I send texts over little things she misses through the day so that it's not completely unbelievable. But my wife has been present for every single big milestone. He coincidentally started crawling with her right there. His first words were in front of her, and he began standing, cruising, and walking when she happened to be home. The walking one was difficult. There was a tough 7-day stretch where she just wasn't home during the daytime when he was awake. And his walking went from teetering to walking a couple steps pretty confidently in that time. We put little bean bags in one of his pants pockets so he'd be wobbly and unbalanced, and it looked believable, since he fell after the first step like he was doing a week ago. Yes, it was mean to our poor son, but my wife's face was worth it. Today it all unraveled. So far he can just say mama, dada, and nana. Yesterday he started saying, bye, bye. My wife has today off and has been home all morning. My mom and I have been trying to get him to say, bye, all day without giving it away that we already know he can say, bye. Successfully got him to say, bye, to the ducks at the park, and we both gushed over his newest word the whole way home. My wife was using my phone to take pictures of him and began showing my mom at home while telling her about his newest word acquisition. She was swiping through my gallery and saw a video from yesterday and goes, "Oh, you never sent me this one." It was literally like a slow motion film happening in front of my eyes. I had taken the video of him yesterday waving, bye, bye. My wife isn't stupid, she figured the whole ruse out pretty much instantly. I've never seen her look so upset and heartbroken before. I couldn't say or do anything to comfort her. Now she's locked herself in the bathroom crying and won't come out.